Good morning. This is me checking to make sure I'm not on mute like I do every single time when I start this show. So thankfully, y'all can hear me, I think. But good morning. It's Friday morning. It's been the end of a long week. It's been a great week so far. I've been crushing all the stuff that I've been meaning to get done. But what I do on a daily basis doesn't hold a candle to the person that I have on with me today. So here's the thing that most photographers don't want to say out loud. And this is the part of the job that they love is shooting. It's not the admin. It's not the marketing or chasing the, I mean, for some people it might be, but I know for me, it's just the shooting part that I like. So everything else for me is just kind of overhead. And Ashley Siegert, I met at WPPI a couple of weeks back. She is the founder of Vacanva, and it's a platform. It pairs photographers with nonprofits, and it does portrait-based fundraising campaigns. And the model's built around getting photographers paid to do the thing that they love to do, which is shoot. So it's really an interesting model that I can't wait for you to hear about, because when I first sat with Ashley at WPPI, I was mind blown, saying, why haven't I heard about this before? How can I get involved? This is going to be a big thing for photographers that feel burned out on a lot of the admin part of the business. So Ashley spent years as a producer, stage manager for ESPN baseball. And she'd fly back and forth all the time. And she was building a portrait photography business at the same time and working with her family. And in my experience, that kind of schedule either breaks you completely or it teaches you something. And from all that I've learned about Ashley and through my conversations with her, what she did was not get broken. She built a company around all of that. So I want to bring her on. We're going to be talking about all about Vacanva, what it is, how it can benefit photographers. And then there's also some stuff they're launching this summer that I'm going to save for a little bit later in the conversation that I think you'll be excited about as well. But without getting too far down the road, I want to bring onto the show Ashley Siegert. Ashley, how are you, my friend? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for doing this so early in the morning. Now, you're in Texas, so it's the crack of 8 a.m. there, correct?
Yeah. Which, as you said, like, I spent my life in sports, so I'm a bit of a night person versus a morning person. But I'm here. I got my coffee in hand with my handmade artisan mug that one of my employees made, and yes, I'm ready to go.
You're a better person than me. I am shotgunning Celsius, and I was the same thing up till about midnight last night. And, you know, I was very nervous about this. We're all very nervous about this. But no, I was up until midnight last night, just one thing after another. Your brain gets going and you just can't, wind down. And when the alarm went off this morning around 5:30 or 6, I said, no, this can't possibly be happening. I've only been asleep for 5 hours. So welcome. This is going to be good no matter how bleary-eyed we are. So when we sat down at WPPI and our friend Ashley brought us together, and I sat with you and I said, all right, explain to me what Vacanva is. And you said, no. You need to hear how we got here first. And, I'm so used to just getting into the story. I'm like, all right, tell me what it is. Cut to the chase. ADHD, only so much brain cells can listen at one time, right? You get it. Why don't we give everybody a little bit of that backstory? Tease the ESPN stuff. You're a portrait photographer. You're raising a serial entrepreneur. So give me the background, and then we'll just start tugging on all these threads and answer a lot of the questions that I know people are going to have.
Sure. So at the time, pre-COVID, like just pre-COVID, I've always known a serial entrepreneur, and I'm that weird person that's like the business person first and the artist second, which I know is not the norm in this industry. But I always wanted to build something bigger. And I was so fortunate to have this incredible coach for my first few years who understood that with me. He was from the startup space, and he did not generally work with like one-off artists to build businesses, but he understood that like I had a bigger vision and we weren't quite sure what that was yet, but that it would develop and it would come about. And so he and I started working together, and it originally was going to be a travel concept where, you know, if you're going to the beach and you want to have family portraits done and you don't know who to hire, we would have kind of our network in place and we would centralize sales and centralize editing, but we would have the photographers in all these different places that we would figure out the locations for you and all that kind of thing. And we were set to launch that in March of 2020 when tourism died a hard death.
Perfect timing. Perfect
Yes.
timing.
But at the same time, I had already brought on my first hire, who was at the time kind of a studio manager type person, but she had grown up here and she had gone to the university here, and she had been on the PTAs of every school that her kids had been in, and so she knew everybody. And I said, I want to be in every silent auction in town, and she said, in my sleep, say less, let's go. And so we were already very close partners with a lot of the nonprofits here when they lost their events to COVID. And so we figured out that that silent auction package could become a sell as many as you can digital product. And we figured out that our platform that our website was on, and we could build them a portal that they could send out to their entire donor base and sell as many of that package as they can. And the first one sold 20 and the next one sold 30. And then we were like, I think we're on to something. And pretty soon we had saturated the majority of the nonprofits in our smaller market and started going outside into the larger metroplexes in our state and beyond. And then did a lot of partnering with the larger organizations tied to the university here. And pretty soon we had, I think now I'm at like 75 people and counting. And we are, you know, working on some big corporate partnerships of how we can grow even faster and kind of an everybody wins scenario. And that's really the core of what we've tried to build, is something where everybody really wins. Like there's no downside for it. The photographers are getting paid work and the clients are getting incredible work that they're also donating to an organization they love, and the nonprofits can raise easy money and everybody really wins. So yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to break this down bit by bit by bit. All right.
Mhm.
So, and I love the fact that you say, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm in a smaller market and it's College Station, Texas, and it's what, 100,000 people. Or
Sure.
so
Compared to like Houston down the road and Austin and DFW and
fair enough. It just made me laugh because I look around, I'm
you're
like,
in the middle of-
I have 500 people. Like, yeah, I've got bigger high schools than I do towns. So it made me laugh. It's all relative, right? So,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. So what struck me again, right, from this conversation, the first conversation, is that you just kind of, and I don't want to gloss over it. You kind of gloss over the fact that you're like, oh yeah, I see opportunity and opportunity and opportunity. We're going to do silent auctions and we're going to get with these nonprofits and we're going to lift people up. There's this serial entrepreneur thread in you, right? And I think you either get that gene or you don't. And you clearly got the genes and the genes from several other people at the same time because you've been doing business building. We're going to get back to Vacanva in a second, but you've been doing business building since you were a kid, right? You face painting, hair salons, portrait businesses, right? Where did that all come from? Was it your dad, who I know was also, he was a television producer, was he not?
Still is, yeah.
Still is, yeah.
So yeah, my dad's a producer. He has, I think he's got like 8 Emmys at this point. I think it's
Just a
8.
couple.
And my mom was also on TV when I was younger. But then she also had like an out of our home business as I was growing up, because they were like, eventually one of us has to get off the road and like raise the kids. And so she came off the road. And so she had like a corporate gift basket business out of our home. And I joke that like the soundtrack of my life was an air compressor, because she had like a foil imprinter, and she would do like the ribbons and the diapers, and they all had like custom names with the hot foil imprinter, which ran off of a compressor that was in our basement. And so that was the background soundtrack of our childhood. And then she always said she had an 8-year attention span. So she went from that to mortgage loans to city council to now she is a consultant for a developer company. And I'm looking for what's coming next. And you never know, like, anything can happen. I know both of my grandfathers were also very much in this mindset. My grandfather on my dad's side started a business that to this day in LA has multiple locations. And then my grandfather on the other side was always the way that I see my brain working. Have you ever watched The Queen's Gambit?
Oh, yeah.
Like laying in bed and like the chess board is on the ceiling. That's how I equate my whole brain. And when I'm in my workouts each day, like literally I forget where I am, and it's the chess pieces on the ceiling at all times. So
I think a lot of us see things that way, especially those of us that focus on strategy and trying to stay 1 or 2 or 57 moves ahead of everybody else, right? And it's a really hard thing to turn off.
Yeah.
Now, growing up with that as a kid, right? And you're seeing all these opportunities and you're doing this. Let's fast forward a little bit and you get to photography, right? Was it a Craigslist ad that you saw? Do I remember you telling me that it was like a Craigslist ad? You were like, oh, I can do that.
Well, so I lived in Atlanta. I was doing TV. And then I went to a wedding and met the bride's brother, and he lived in Texas. And I was like, wrap him up. I'll take him. That one. Done. And so eventually moved to Texas. But I was a freelancer in TV at that point. And so everybody was still trying to crew me in Atlanta and didn't know to crew me in Texas. And so in our little rental house, I was like, what can I be doing while he's a teacher and at school all day? And I found a Craigslist ad for a magazine that was based in a couple towns over that needed ad sales in a town a couple towns over the other direction. And so I was like, well, I need to get to know people. And so door knocking is a good way to learn who runs each business and get to know them. And I learned, I feel like everybody needs that, like that cold sales position as a 20-something, because it'll teach you literally everything you need to know to do anything else. And so I was, wandering around to businesses all over town and getting to know the business owners, some of whom today are my best friends. And that they were like, hey, we're going to need some pictures of your clients. And I was like, oh, so like you're going to be publishing those. So I should probably know what I'm doing. I signed up for a photography class at the community center, which doesn't exist. I mean, the community center still exists, but they don't have photography classes anymore. And learned how to shoot in manual. And I actually very vividly remember, when I was learning depth of field, I had a bunch of like clementines, like the little oranges. Sure. And I went outside in the front yard and put them like along the sidewalk. And I was in my socks. I didn't have any shoes on. And I locked myself out of the house, and my husband was at work, and I had to go to the neighbor's house who I didn't know and be like, hi, I have no shoes on. I'm locked out of my house. There's oranges like lining the front path, and I'm going to need to use your phone. She was like, sure. So, yeah. And then I learned off-camera flash, like closing my dog in the bathroom and, okay, here's a trigger. And our dog was like, what now? What are we doing now? And yeah.
So I can't do this. It's too hard. Nah, I don't think it's going to work out. That doesn't pop up in your brain anywhere, does it? It's just, you have a mission and I'm going to solve it. And I'm building here. What do you think about that? Do you ever?
I don't want to like come off as any kind of superwoman like Barbara. I always say therapy is expensive, but totally worth it. And so I'm not going to tell you that I don't have breaking moments of like, oh, that's bad. That's bad. Right. But ultimately, like, yes, I will always kind of end up figuring out some new angle to make it work, or be like, all right, well, that didn't work, moving on. And kind of go from there. So I think as ADHD people, I think we love a puzzle. And so anytime I see a new variable, I want to figure out how to fit it in and how to make it work and how to make it optimize what we're already doing. But I would be remiss to say that like I'm always just like, let's figure it out. It's going to be great. But also at the same time, a lot of times I will try to often put in too many variables. And so I am lucky to have a team who's willing to say, take a breath, take a breath. That's a lot.
Well, I think that's part of the journey of anybody that's trying to create something, anybody that's trying to build something, that there's always going to be those moments where we get those super heavy challenges, and it feels like it'd be a lot easier if I just became a barista and gave up all of this stuff. But there's also that thing, the problem solver, the solution finder in us that just a lot of times can't let that go. And so
Yeah.
during COVID, where you were starting to, figure this stuff out, you're about to launch, and everything kind of takes a crazy Ivan turn to the left, and you have to start figuring this out. You're going to figure it out, or at least you're going to attack the challenge. But what did it feel like in that moment when you realized that everything that you had been building to is suddenly going to take a completely different turn? Was it at that moment that you felt like, all right, I know the idea is solid and I know this can work, so we're going to move forward with it? Or I don't have any options left? What were you feeling at the time when you were like, yeah, let's keep moving forward with this just in a different way?
So, we were in a little bit different position than a lot of people during COVID. We weren't wedding photographers, so we weren't just like, we lost all of our events and it's over. Like there's no fixing this. We are also in a town with a major university.
Yep.
That very strangely, like not strangely, but it very uniquely has a very strong culture of college senior pictures. And so I always did a lot of college senior pictures, but when these parents figured out that they weren't going to get graduation ceremonies, they literally like had their kids drive back to campus. They were like, if we're not going to get a ceremony, we're at least going to do nice photos. And so we tripled how many college seniors we did that year. And then it was also during wildflower season, and we had one of the best crops of wildflowers that year. And those were all things you could do outside, 6 feet apart, like all those things. So we were not quite in the same boat. And I say that also with like, a lot of people just gave up. They were like, okay, we're done. We can't go out. We can't, we can't do anything. And that's not how I roll. So I was like, I mean, am I breaking rules doing this? I don't think so. Let's try it. Let's see how many people want it. Let's try it. And so we grew that year actually. And then it was from there, we were kind of testing the fundraiser program. And it really wasn't for like another 2 years that we were like, we've broken the code on how to find clients. Like this is the thing that photographers have been trying to figure out on how to drive clients. And our biggest issue is having enough bodies to fulfill those sessions. Because then 2 years ago, we were like, okay, well, what if this multi-chapter nonprofit competed the chapters against each other? And that first campaign in 30 days sold 400 sessions. And so, I need more photographers, I need more editors, I need more client managers. And so we kind of exploded from there. So
So those are the Aggie moms. Is that what you call them? The Aggie moms. All right. And they're all these chapters all over the place. And you decided, I love how you said that, we're going to exploit them and, the chapter against each other, put them against each other. I love that. But in that, understanding like, oh, we've got these chapters and there's a little bit of competition and there's a lot of moms and there's a lot of opportunity here. When did you realize, or I should say, what was it about that model that you realized at that point that you hadn't realized before, right? Thinking about nonprofits or thinking about growing, why did that one stick out as your big aha moment?
I think we knew very early on that our target client was always going to be the 45 to 70 matriarch.
Mm.
That has always been our best client who really appreciates what we do, because they ultimately, it's something where the value of what we do is really realized in that demographic, because they want their kids are generally not home anymore, and they want to feel like they can do something that really matters to their family, even though they're not in their home anymore. And then they also want to look up at their wall every day and see their kids and their grandkids smiling back. And generally speaking, they have a little bit more disposable income. They have a little bit more time to spend on, planning these types of things than your 30-something mom. Most people, when grandma says, please show up at this time wearing this thing, everybody says, yes, ma'am. And they fall into place. And so we knew very early, like that's the kind of client that we're going to best fit with, to do what we want to do, and to have the variety of work. And for, I have an education degree. So like, that whole like people management and kids and all the things, and stage managing is the same way. Like, classroom management is classroom management, and so that was always going to be my sweet spot. And so where are they? They're on the donor list of all the nonprofits. They're the driving force of pretty much every nonprofit. They're running the boards, they're running the volunteer committees, they are filling the tables. And so, how do we make it worth their while to share us with that donor list? And how about we just make them a lot of money? And so then, here right off 10 minutes from me is the headquarters of this network of moms who are exactly who we're trying to find. And so I said, how can I make it worth their while? They're trying to raise scholarship money. Let's blitz that. Let's get them as much as possible, because then they also want their senior pictures for their kids, and they want family portraits on campus and in their hometown and all these places. And then, on the other side of it and the sports side of it, I then went to the athletic department and said, hey, we would love, and this was also a COVID thing originally, people were really upset they couldn't get into the stadium. And I said, well, let's give them an opportunity and do family portraits in the stadium. And they were like, I was under no illusion they were going to say yes.
Right.
But worst I could do is ask, and the worst they could do is say no, and they didn't. And so we now do an exclusive weekend in the stadium that they can upgrade to. And so now we're working on other stadiums and figuring out how we can do that for the fan bases of other stadiums, working with the foundations of each of those ball clubs. And then a lot of the players have their own foundations, and it just kind of, yeah.
There's a lot of interactivity between a lot of these different groups. And it's the thing I love about talking to you is every time you come up with something, it's never a win-lose, where you're getting something and you're getting paid and they're not getting anything, or they're getting money and you're left, feeling like you just gave away the farm. Everybody's winning here, right? The fans are winning because they get to be on the field. The matriarchs are winning because they get their legacy pictures, right? Which is kind of like a big cultural thing. And then, you're winning because you're growing your business. Just seems like there's not a whole lot of downside to this. Now, I'm not saying that everything is roses, but
Oh no, it's wild.
but where do photographers fit in with all this, right? So like you build this thing and you're driving these campaigns, and we're making 400 sessions and $40,000 in, record time. Where do photographers fit into this model? And start explaining that, because I think the people that are listening are certainly going to be like, all right, she's onto something, but how do I get to be part of
How do I
this?
fit in?
Yeah.
So obviously I am one person, and I'm getting too old to be out there, squatting for
Amen.
20 hours a week. And so I can't shoot them all myself. And so I can to where we have our Vacanva photographer network, which is basically our go-to people in whatever market we are doing the nonprofits in, but we actually now tell them that they can use their session anywhere nationwide. And if I don't have a photographer yet in that market, then I have somebody on my staff whose job it is to go find somebody to fill that session. And we, like I said, we don't need you, photographer, to take on this client fully soup to nuts. We literally are asking for an hour and a half of your time to show up, execute the shoot, come back, upload, and get paid. So when a photographer has an empty Wednesday afternoon or an empty Saturday morning that they couldn't fill on their own, here's a way to not only get a rep of, another session,
True.
get paid for that time, but also, our challenge then is how much value add can we put for the photographers? And so one of the reasons that you and I met, that I was at WPPI, is that we are hardcore on the mission of creating the value for the photographer on the other side for being part of the network and for, serving our clients as the photographer boots on the ground. And so we have been working diligently to put in that value add. And one of the first things is a feedback loop, because most photographers are an island. They are only getting the feedback from their clients and from their likes. Like, that's the only feedback they're getting on the daily. And so now, not only are they going to, fill the time, get that extra cash, but then I have 5 different checkpoints where they're going to get ratings on different criteria. And then if anything on one of those checkpoints from an editor, a client manager, a client, or our head of photography, if anything is below a 5-star rating, they're going to get a guide of like tips and tricks for that particular criteria. And they're swipe guides that have like images and tips, and they can put it on their phone and they can swipe through before the next session if they want. So, in a world where we used to have, photographers going and working in a studio and working under a master and learning the craft before hanging their shingle, and now like you hang your Facebook page or your Instagram and you're a photographer, and that's great. And like, go get your bag, like do your thing, bro. But like, who's giving you the feedback to improve if you are no longer in that model of feedback? And so that this also provides that opportunity from peers in the industry.
From the standpoint as a photographer that doesn't do a lot of family sessions on the regular, right? I've done them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not something that people up here do a lot. So in my little location, it tends to be more kids, weddings, right? The big family stuff or even family portraits might be a once-a-year thing. So you don't get a ton of reps on it unless you're on the coast and specializing in that. So what I'm hearing is, for a photographer that might be like me, specializes headshots, personal branding, doesn't do a lot of families, but isn't necessarily booking 5 days a week, all this stuff, wants to make a little bit of extra income. This kind of sounds perfect because there's a couple of things here. One, I'm going to get paid. 2, it's not a long amount of work to do, hour and a half, 2 hours, something along those lines. And then 3, I'm getting reps with families and I'm getting better at the craft, learning, working on the fly, like in the field immediately. So, and if that doesn't work, I get instruction from other photographers and I get guides and I get posing and I get lighting and I get all that feedback. For especially newer photographers, and I say, let's say under 5 years in business, this sounds like a great opportunity to really not only get ingrained with other families, but also learn way more about what you like and don't like in your business, what you can handle and what you can't handle. So tell me about what you're seeing as photographers come on board. What types of questions are they having, right? Because I got to imagine they're like, well, this sounds way too good to be true. What's in it for me, right? So,
well, and that's honestly been our biggest feedback, both from the photographer standpoint and the nonprofit feedback standpoint, is we've removed so much of the issues that it feels scammy. And so that's been the biggest thing that we've had to overcome, and where our partnerships are coming into play, because, once people really like sit down and talk to us and like ask all the questions, and this happened with you and me in Las Vegas, you were like, okay, but what about this? Okay, but what about this? So like, I'm gonna poke a hole.
I felt bad. I was trying to find places.
Bring it. Like we have spent, 5 years plugging the holes and figuring out how to make it worth everybody's while, and really make it where everybody wins. I will say, for baby photographers, like it's not necessarily the best fit to like for me to throw you out there with, a family of 30 and be like, good luck, have fun. Like there's still a quality standard that the client is going to expect. And so, in a perfect world for us, it's somebody that has, at least a little bit of family work in their background, where they understand like what a 2-year-old really is. And they understand, because we had a baby photographer one time and I said, okay, so how do you pick like your spots and this, that, and the other? And he was like, well, the models know their angles. And I was like, grandma don't know what her angles, Becky. I was like, I don't know that putting you with, our demographic is going to be quite the right fit. But when they're really trying to figure out and hone their craft, not only do they not have to, go out and market for this client and do model calls and work for free, and nonprofits continuously ask for us to work for free. And, every photographer has to find that balance of like what they're willing to give up their time for the nonprofits and whatnot. And we're not asking you to do that. We're fronting, a flat rate per session, regardless of what kind of sale we get on the back end. And so for the photographers to be able to have those reps, have their, time compensated in a time where they wouldn't have otherwise. And then also like in this network, in this, peer group, to be able to have that feedback has been very valuable. I have had a few photographers here in town, especially because, they get so many reps because we're headquartered here and we've really like built it here. And this hopefully will be the case moving forward everywhere. They get so many, and they get so in love with the fact that they don't have to do any of the other work. They don't have to edit. They don't have to call. They don't have to market. They don't have to do the client consultation, the sales, like any of it. They show up, they shoot, they upload, they get paid. And so I've had a couple here that just were like, I'm just gonna shoot for you and just stop worrying about trying to run a business. And like, we don't ask that of anybody. We don't have a non-compete. We don't like want you to close your business. We want this to help you keep your business afloat, because it helps you make ends meet, and it improves your craft, and it gives you, a community and people that you can ask questions of. And my operations director and I, or my head of photographers and I, like, we've been in the industry for 15 years and each, and we have seen it all. We've tried it all. I have shot it, like, you name it, I've shot it. I wrote a book on birth photography and like did a whole like video course. I have done commercial. I have, been under the mentorship of a major commercial photographer. I have seen and done it all at some point because, ADHD. But so we can answer a lot of the questions, especially from a business side, that people have that they don't necessarily have a lot of people to ask those questions of. And so we have a Facebook group. We're like, come on, like, ask whatever you want. And we're an open book, and we're not gatekeeping, because ultimately, and we're seeing this in the industry, the spirit of competition and the spirit of gatekeeping does nothing but miseducate the market,
right,
and build contempt between photographers. And I'm not about that life. Like, I have never won by being a closed off gatekeeper. I've only ever won by being open and honest and like bringing people into the bubble. And what can we do? How can we help? What can we do together?
And that's the vibe that I got, is that you're big into the community over competition. And there are a lot of people that say that and try to promote, I'm all about community over competition. But this really does seem like it's altruistic at its core for photographers to be able to shore up their business. Now, I know that there have been a couple of photographers, like you said, that have left their studios or closed their studios and become full-time Vacanva photographers because it just makes things easy and it fits their lifestyle. And I know that's not the norm, But there's quite a few photographers at this point that are really adding to their income stream. And that leads me to a question. So these days, a lot of what we get taught from all the photo gurus is you can build this 6-figure business and you just have to do this X, Y, and Z. Now, if you have to do other things, there's always this like, oh yeah, no, if you have to do a side hustle, do a side hustle to make extra money. But the undertext is you're kind of failing at your business if you have to do that, right? I've never really looked at it that way. I'm like, what other opportunities are out there for me?
Right.
So I can believe that some photographers are going to look at this and say, I feel shame that I have to do this to make a couple extra bucks to put in my pocket. There's this weird thing, this weird shame around it, right? So as you get into these conversations, what are the things that you're hearing from photographers as their concerns, right? So from someone seasoned that's sitting in the back going, there's not a lot of downside to this, right? Unless you just loathe doing family photography. But there's not a whole lot of downs, right? Totally fair. That's why I don't do a whole lot of it.
Those are not for everybody, and I wholeheartedly understand.
In the middle of a college football stadium. So
right.
if someone comes to you and they seem a little bit skeptical, what are the concerns that you're hearing from photographers, and how do you address those? How do you get past them? Like, is it pay? Is it hours? Is it scheduling? What are the things that come up?
The biggest thing is not only have the gurus been telling everybody that all of that, but they have been telling them that if you show up and get out of bed with your camera for under X dollars, that's a failure. And so when we tell them you're not culling, you're not editing, you're not marketing, none of the overhead applies. The pay is going to reflect that time that we are asking for. And so when they say, okay, what's the pay? And we say it's between $125 and $200 for a session, they go, oh, they recoil, because they've been told if I'm not making, 4 to 5 figures on every session, then it's not worth me getting out of bed.
Right.
Which I totally and 100% support for your own clients, that you have all of the overhead and you invest all of the hours and the time and the editing and the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But you're also willing to drop thousands on workshops for 3 days of feedback instead of constant access to a network of professionals. And B, I'm only asking for basically 2 hours of your life. And there's a lot of people with master's degrees in their fields that are not making the hourly that comes out to. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of photographers don't understand their numbers.
Yeah.
To be able to say, if I can fill those 2 hours for $200, that's 100% worth that 2 hours when I'm not having to invest in all of the other overhead. And so one of the things that I had at WPPI was this calculator that I built that the photographer can absolutely go in and plug in all of their numbers and figure out what they are making per hour, and realize that generally speaking, even for your seasoned and like high priced photographers, it's going to be about a third of what I'm paying you per hour.
Yep.
And that's reality. And, like by the time you're doing all the things for a client that they expect, it's going to be, somewhere in the realm of 35 to 50 to on a high end, 75 to 100 an hour. And we're paying about 100 an hour.
Right.
So why not just like throw in that extra 2 hours and not have to do all the other things involved? So that's been our biggest pushback more than anything.
And I think it's valid, but when you put it in those terms, right? When I first did my numbers for the very first time as a photographer, and I was just like, why am I not really making the money? And I went through everything and I did the process, right? Because everyone's like, write down all your expenses and, everything. And you always kind of skirt it because you want to feel like you're making better money than you actually are. But when you strap down and you look at it and you realize you're making $17.50 an hour and you're doing this, and I could be working at Home Depot making $20 an hour and not dealing with all the stuff that I'm dealing with, it's a big reality check, right? And so I instantly said, if I want to survive at this, let's raise the prices.
Right.
To a point where you're making $100 an hour, $150 an hour. And that, to me, is when you factor in taxes, when you factor in saving, when you factor on running your own business, again, it comes back down to about $50, $75 an hour, which ain't a bad rate. If you look at it at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with that, right? So all right, so we've solved the money problem. Now, the question that leads me to is, okay, I'm in an area where I don't know any of the nonprofits. The nonprofits don't know me. How do I get hooked up with these families? Like, what's the process for a photographer? Is just application? Is there a portfolio review? Are you a good person? Like, what drug tests? Like, what's in there, right? So you tell me, what does it look like if a photographer says, I don't see a lot of this happening in my area, but I'm really interested? What do those steps look like?
I do.
Yeah.
So we have yes to all of it. We on our website have a full explanation page. That calculator is available to anybody. You do not have to be a Vacanva photographer to understand your numbers. That is a free tool that I built, so that's on the page as well. And the application, and we do ask for a full, raw, unculled, unedited family session from your portfolio. That way, because that's what we are receiving from you, and our art department handles all the editing and culling and everything, we need to see what we're going to be getting from your work. And then our head of photographers also will do a deep dive on your social media, your website, your reviews, everything, and do some vetting, because at the end of the day, we're sending you out with clients and we need to make sure that everybody's going to be in a good position. And then as we are growing and we're trying to, onboard more and more nonprofits and run more and more campaigns, if there are nonprofits in your area that you know of that you think would benefit from this, you can add those as like, check out these groups in my area, and our fundraising team will go and check them out, talk to them, see if it's a good idea to run a campaign with them. If so, you, as the photographer for referring that nonprofit, is going to get first right of refusal on those sessions in that area. So that's a good way to get more sessions, is by being like, hey, here's some nonprofits that, like, were they to run a campaign, they're in my area, I'm ready to shoot for you. However, we don't require it, and if we need somebody in that area for a client that wants to shoot there, and you're in that area and you've onboarded, then you're our person, first and foremost. And so, because you're not having to do the consultations, you're not doing the scheduling, you're not doing any of the troubleshooting on the scheduling, our client managers handle all of that. And so anybody that has purchased any fundraiser package in our entire ecosystem can then choose to shoot wherever they're going to be. And so say somebody is like, we're going to North Maine for, our anniversary, and we bought one for this, school in San Antonio, but we want to use it in Maine. I'm going to call Matt and be like, hey, I got this client and they want to do the session up there. Are you available? And when I say call and ask if you're available, we have a calendar system that we implement you into. We're not calling every person one by one every time we do a consultation. We have a whole system, and you get a text message that says you've been assigned to it. You can double check that it's all going to work. If you have any issues, you can talk to the client manager, et cetera. And then if you run into weather or somebody gets sick or whatever, that all goes back to the client manager for rescheduling. So you're not handling any of the logistics that go into all of that.
That's the thing, man. That is the thing that just ruins me. And it's the reason as a solopreneur, right? Don't have anybody working for me. Time is everything. So whatever I can automate, whatever I can do to take those admin tasks off my plate, the better, right? That way I can spend my time shooting or editing if you love editing or retouching. But all of that adds up to hours. And for any family session, you're culling, you're choosing, you're editing, you're revealing, you're selling, you're doing all the things. And it sounds like all that gets taken off your hands. And you really are. And I said this before, and it's a horrible turn of phrase and has no reflection on you. But it's like, we joke all the time about being like, dance monkey, just press the button. In this case, you kind of are just pressing the button with, a good eye to the craft, clearly. But all that,
it's more people management than it is even that,
right.
It's the dynamics of the families that we see in front of us. And I especially used to say in birth photography, like when you have a camera in your hand, like you become one of their family immediately. And the dynamic change happens immediately. And so we need people even more than like a lighting expert. Like I can teach you lighting, but I need somebody that when like grandpa comes in hot because he don't want to be there,
right,
that you can diffuse the vibe. And like that is worth its weight in gold. And if I got somebody that can do that, like I will keep you busy all day, every day.
But there were a couple of things that you said in the conversation that we had in Vegas, which was you told me a couple of stories. You had one story, and I'm going to paraphrase, so you fill in the details. I'd love to hear these again. The dads that don't want to be there, but then they realize they're going to be on the football field, and then they're driving it because like, hey, I'm going to be in Aggie Stadium and be able to get right on the field with my family. Super cool for the guys' man cave or whatever they're calling these days.
Right.
But like the guys get their dream fulfilled to be on the field. And then you also told me a story about someone taking their first steps, like the baby taking the first steps, right? And if you're someone that thrives in an environment where you can handle all of these different types of personalities and emotions, this sounds like a piece of cake. Is that the type of person that you're looking for? Someone that's not necessarily an extrovert, but someone that is comfortable dealing with people, comfortable being in these situations, talking to anybody. Okay, got it.
The amount of former teachers that I have hired over the years is wild because they can handle diffusing, they can handle large amounts of personalities, and they can handle parents, the dynamics of parents and grandparents.
That's big,
and that's a large portion of the photography industry at this point is former teachers who have just gotten fed up with the way that teachers are treated and are like, I'm going to go home with my kids and figure out something I can do on the side. And so we have a lot of those. And those are great because they can diffuse any sort of, one of my former teacher photographers, bless her, I remember a few years ago, she texted me and she was like, they fed their children ice cream for breakfast. It went about as expected.
Load them up with sugar, send them on out.
Like,
I love
what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's what I do. Like, I don't have kids. All my friends that do, I'm like the fun uncle, and I'll just give them a whole bunch of sugar, spin them up, push them back to the parents, and be like, I'll catch you guys next week. Oh, I love doing that stuff. Not necessarily as a photographer. I understand the concern that's there. Listen, I want to transition a little bit because it sounds like if people want to find out about Vacanva and the application process and all that, it sounds really straightforward. And like you mentioned, if there's not something in the area where there are active nonprofits that are doing this, but you have ideas, it's a two-way street with you guys too, right? And saying, hey, I got this great idea over here. Can you put your team on it? And then, like you said, first right of refusal, you can open up your own opportunities here in your area and still not have to do a lot of the legwork. Right?
And that also, like, it will ingratiate you to the nonprofits a lot as well.
Sure.
And so the relationships you're able to build in your town based on that. And like when you bring this opportunity to them and be like, hey, because on the other side, and we haven't even because that's a whole different audience and a whole different bubble of questions of wild, but like when you go to a nonprofit and say, hey, they're going to hand you a campaign in a box, and all you have to do is like put out the marketing materials that they make for you and collect your money. And 100% of the donations, by the way, we don't take a cut of the donations. And the packages, they donate $99 and they get this sitting in one 16 by 20 mounted print. And we are now an all Graphy Studio partner. So then all of the pieces, if they choose to purchase above and beyond, are all of those. And so the donor is getting a really high quality experience. We're really taking care of, like, when you talk to the nonprofits and they're like, I don't know, we don't know these people. Like, we are taking care of their donors, soup to nuts. And then they literally almost have to do nothing except for like put out the marketing materials that we hand them. And even then we're like, I used to say, like, if I could go and post them on your Facebook for you, if I could go and schedule the emails in your MailChimp for you, I would do that. You're never going to hand me your list. So I totally understand. And now we've even got like third-party apps that I can hook them into so that I can schedule their posts for them. Without having full access to all their stuff. And so we've done everything in our power to possibly make it as easy as possible for everybody involved.
And I think this is where your background as a photographer really comes into play, right? It's not like you're some tech bro, VC, private equity person coming in, right? You know, and not understanding the market. You understand the mindset of a photographer because you are one, and understanding where those battles might arise with someone, what they might be thinking, what challenges there might be. But with that, I know you're also building something that you're launching this summer, and I kind of caught it, but you were still in that kind of development phase. You didn't give me all the details. So tell me about it, because I think this is going to appeal to a lot of people as well. Let me know what it's about.
This came out of WPPI. This came out of me. So Maureen Neese, who is just phenomenal and is the U.S. proprietor of Graphy Studio and runs their U.S. headquarters and beyond, has been amazing in partnering with us and really like explain. They have such a close relationship with all of their photographer clients, and they call them like monthly, and you know, almost with every order. Not with us, because they would be she would be calling me every day. But I bug her enough as it is. But one of the things when we were there, I was helping at their booth and recruiting from their booth. And it meant that we had all these reps of having this conversation over and over again. And so what we realized for a lot of photographers, we were like, I don't think I really need that. I don't think I really want to be, you know, in that bubble. I don't really need it. I'm doing fine. And we don't just want the baby photographers. We want the seasoned photographers who are going to deliver really beautiful lighting and really beautiful work. And our top photographers here in town are the ones, you know, our best lighting guys are the ones who are like, I'm not really promoting my own stuff anymore because it's easier to just shoot for you, because I just want to do the creative work. And so for those people, what I gleaned from those conversations was one of their pain points is that they have a body of fine artwork that they know if they figured out online sales would sell. So I'm not talking client work. I'm not talking like commissioned portrait work. I'm talking like, you know, your landscapes, your and it can be people, but your fine artwork that's, you know, your personal art that you have done for you, or, you know, for whatever reason is not commissioned portrait work. And a lot of them are like, I know if I figured out online sales, I could, you know, do some sort of sideline where I'm selling all of that. And I heard it probably 8 or 9 times at WPPI. And that the biggest hurdle is that then they have to figure out how to set that up online. They have to figure out fulfillment. They have to figure out maintaining another website. They have to figure out the business model behind all of that. And like, when they sit down and start to like poke it out, they're like, I just realized I have to do that, and then I have to, and then the shipping, and then and they just don't do it, and so it's just sitting on a hard drive somewhere, and that stinks. But we already have all of that infrastructure in place. We already have the fulfillment figured out with Graphy. We already have the tools to make that happen. So I came home and started poking around. And when I poke around versus when somebody pokes around doesn't love the business side of it as much, I fell down like a 4-day rabbit hole of building the entire thing. And my poor staff, they were like, she found ADHD medication diagnosed and prescribed and AI in the same month, and we are just holding onto our pants. And
and you're like human Claude code, right? As soon as you get it, you just go off and start building something. Yeah, it's great.
Well, and now I've started pitting them all against each other, and like it's it's bad. But so I built it, and so the vision behind that is not only can the Vacanva photographer, so once you've onboarded with us, this is going to be exclusive for people who are willing to take client sessions, are going to be able to submit their artwork. And our curator, Leon, who's also one of our top photographers here, is going to be going through and choosing which pieces go on the gallery, to then where we will run a full marketing campaign for that piece and sell it on the platform and do all of the fulfillment, and the photographer will literally just receive the money. And so we have broken it down, and it's going to have a very transparent pricing model where there's 5 sizes. There's 3 finishes, like the actual like face finish, and then 2 finish choices as far as like either framed or they're pro edged, and then 2 colors of the pro edge and 3 frame colors. So it's very simplified as far as like the interface of how they're ordering them. And then the photographer will get 40%. A nonprofit of the collector's choice will get 10%. So it's another revenue stream for the nonprofits, for the people who don't necessarily want a portrait session, but they want to be involved in the campaign. 10% to our curator, 20% to Graphy for all of our, fulfillment stuff. And then 20% to the platform for all the overhead and everything. Sure. And so across the board, and like all of it is very transparent, and you can see like the collector knows exactly where the money's going. Photographer knows exactly where the money's going. We'll do limited runs of like how many we'll sell so that it is actually, fulfilling kind of the fine art promise. Graphy also does a certificate of authenticity on the back that they can digitally etch the photographer's signature. All the things. I mean, we'll be running, Pinterest campaigns and all of that. So now the photographer doesn't even have to worry about any of that, but can still make that passive revenue off their fine artwork that is just sitting on a drive somewhere.
Sign me up. Sign me up. I've got collection after collection in Lightroom of stuff that I'm like, when I open a print shop, when I open my Etsy store, when I put fine art for, I've been talking about this for years, about doing more online sales of the fine artwork that I have, the landscapes, the abstracts, all that sort of stuff, right? That's all sitting there. So count me in on that. The other part of that got me thinking was you've got a lot of photographers that don't want to get into business with other companies because they feel they're not going to get what they deserve. And the thing that I loved when you were just breaking down all those percentages, and I've run into this a ton in different people's business strategies, I'm one that tries to put all of the artists first. I want them to get the majority share of whatever it is because it's their art, it's their product. They deserve the lion's share of whatever comes in from that. So a 40% cut is great. And people are going to say, well, what about the other 60%? Why am I not getting the... Well, the other 60% is split up between donations for being a good human and the materials that are getting sent out and the overhead for the admin that you don't have to do, right? And so 40% really ain't that bad for uploading a file. I'm not shaming anybody for anything like that. So I love the fact that you're coming at it yet again from the standpoint of helping artists, helping photographers, not taking from them for your benefit. And someone could say any capitalism is beneficial to.
Sure.
I don't care about any of that. What I'm
But it's
saying,
also it's a sandbox we're playing in, baby.
right?
So.
It really is. But the thing that I love is that you're keeping the photographer as, as the person that should be the focus, right? They are producing their art, they're selling their art. You're giving them the capability to do that to make more money. Why wouldn't people do this? The amount of work that goes into setting up your own e-commerce store to sell this stuff, and then all the fulfillment that goes along with it, and then all the marketing that goes along with it, and the advertising that goes along with it. It's a huge commitment. And to be able to do something that's turnkey seems like it's, especially with Graphy, is going to be a remarkable product. When are you looking to launch all of this?
We're hoping to launch this summer. The one piece that I'm not allowed to touch is how it ties into our whole database. Because when I touch the database, things break, and my head of IT gets real mad.
Stand your lane.
So yes. And so she is finishing out the submission process that ties into all of that, and then our Leon, our curator, is going to be kind of coming through the initial group so that when we launch it, we have a solid amount in the gallery. I'm hoping about 60 to 80 pieces before launch so that it has a good body of work. And then we'll be off to the races. And I'm really hoping, more than anything, like my goal was to make it a value add for photographers who want to come on to take client sessions.
Sure.
And so same thing as when we said, okay, we want the nonprofits to market us to our perfect demographic is their donor base. How do I make it worth their while? Let's make them a lot of money. That's generally my answer to most things of like, if I'm going to ask you something, I'm going to try to figure out how to make you money in the process. Like that's kind of my whole approach to all of it. And we've been working on also some corporate sponsorship strategies of how we can appeal to some of these companies to come in and match the donations, because they're also going to get the impact marketing of being on the campaigns. And how do we make it worth everybody's while? And so that's really the approach that I'm coming with to everything with is how do I make it make sense for you, and how do I make you a lot of money? Because in the process, you will both, appreciate the company, promote the company, and everybody will win. And I mentioned my coach earlier on, and unfortunately we lost him to colon cancer about not quite 2 years ago, and he was the first to come in and be like, what is the core principle of everything we do? And the early version of it, when we were all women and we were, flying by the seat of our pants, was, I got you, girl. And so if something went wrong, there was always somebody that can be like, I got you. I'm going to come help, like whatever. But it has morphed into this, everybody wins. And that he's always kind of in the back of my head whispering, like, is everybody going to win? Like, how's this going to go? So that's really kind of what has built the whole thing.
I love that. It's such a great philosophy that it seems, I'm going to dumb this down for me. It seems simple in theory. Oh, everybody wins. In practice, way different, I can only imagine. But I love the fact that, again, we're back to your problem solving. We're back to where you were as a kid thinking, how do I start a hair salon in my basement, right? You found a problem, you're solving it. How do I make this win for everybody? And as a core philosophy, I just wish more people had that slant rather than the self-centered version of it, which is what's in this for me, which is where a lot of people come from. And I think you have to if you're a business owner, but at the same time, you can do it in such a way that everybody around you raises up as well. And you don't have to be this Machiavellian character where you just get your bag and everybody else is kind of a plebeian underneath you. I really like the fact that you're raising up artists at the same time. All right. So the last thing that I wanted to address here, because it's not just the people that are the photographers that are hesitant to take a second job or worry about their schedule or the shame surrounding getting a second job or anything like that. But there's a lot of photographers that are just burned out right now, that are really tired of chasing down leads and chasing down clients and getting ghosted on consultation calls and all of that. So when a photographer comes to you and they're explaining their situation, what do you say to that person? And I know it's not, we're going to save you and we're the best thing in the world, but what's that honest conversation that you have, and what is their typical response?
So this is probably the most common thing that we see is, this exhaustion, because marketing right now is chase photographer marketing on the whole speaker circuit. I taught this at Texas School for 4 years, and was having to explain the algorithms, the way that we have to approach our marketing so that as it changes every day, you are not just like Zuckerberg sneezed and everything broke and like whatever. Like, because that was the world we were all being forced to live in for a really long time of like, if
100%.
your Facebook ads were no longer tracking and you didn't know why because you're not running the algorithm, like, what are you going to do? And so, yes, we see that a lot. And as artists also who just want to be focusing on the art, keeping up with the tech is miserable for a lot of people, and they are burnt out on it. And so, I would say that the industry is shifting massively because the way that we as an industry have been trying to run is just not sustainable in what's coming. And I know everybody freaks out about AI and like whatever. And once again, everybody freaks out about a lot of things. Everybody freaked out about digital. Everybody freaked out about,
100%.
COVID and shut everything down. Like in the 15 years, which is a very tiny blip of a window of time, the amount of freakouts that I have witnessed in the industry is off the charts. And you can either choose to join the freakout brigade or see the chessboard. And so, like I said, my team, we are an open book. We are happy to answer any questions of like, how do I do this? How do I figure this out? Where do I even come from? And so being a part of the network and being in the Facebook group and, the tools that we are finding, like I am so excited when I find a new tool that solves a new problem that like, there is no way I do not have the capacity to keep it to myself. Like I am like, have you guys seen this? It's so cool. And, and then people are like, okay, like, maybe go a week with the tools we have before you find another one. Can we? And I actually, when I did the calculator, I put it on a landing page with like, when you get to your hourly rate and you don't like it, the only option is not just like, okay, come work for us. The options are, okay, here are the 5 other tools that I have found that will help you fix that number. Yeah. Because ultimately I want you to be running your business and be happy about running your business. And if by the time your business is where you want it to be, I still want you to be just like, but I really love shooting Vacanva sessions, not because you have to, but because you want to. And so we're an open book. We're happy to answer questions about the business side, about really just about anything. We have 5 amazing editors around the world who are, we have gotten our automations down. And like, here's the other side of it. There is no CRM that does this. There is no like central how you run 75 people around the country at lightning pace with images going back, raw files going back and forth and culling and all this stuff. We had to build it ourselves. And so I was saying my head of tech, she has literally built our CRM from scratch. Amazing. And makes the whole system run like dominoes every day. And so when we say, hey, like this broke or this happened, like she is up at midnight being like, I'm fixing it, I'm patching it. We are not tech bros. We are like making it happen just as things come up. And so we have brought on as many like partners that have already figured out parts that we don't want to have to replicate or do from scratch. We this year implemented a third-party donation platform so that we don't touch the money that gets donated. It goes directly into the account on that platform for the nonprofit to withdraw to their bank. Like, we don't even touch it. And so, like, things like that where we're just, implementing ways that other companies have figured out puzzle pieces that we can leverage, we're all about it.
I love this so much that you had this weird, strange pivot, and now it's grown into something probably bigger than you imagined and more complex than you imagined. But it's all really positive, not only for you as an entrepreneur, but for the industry as a whole. I can see variations of this popping up in different places, right? But not copying Vacanva, but more just the idea of, we can go about how we market and how we interact with companies in a different way. And I love talking to people that are thinking a little bit differently like that, like you've done here. And I wanted to bring up some of what the website looks like so that people have an understanding of where it is. And it's very simple to find at canva.com. Is there anything in here that people should be reading about? Is there a place for them to apply right here? Is it just get in contact with you and you reach out to them? Tell me a little bit about what's the best way for people to visit the site and then learn more about it, get in touch with you, process, that sort of thing.
So if you scroll all the way to the bottom footer, there is a join the team, and that will take you right to the become a Vacanva photographer page. And that has all the tools. It has FAQs and testimonials from some of my favorite people around here who have been with us from a lot of them from the start. That yellow button right there is the calculator that you can run your numbers and kind of see what it is you're actually making. That's our Facebook group where you can go in, and that's usually if we have a place that we need to fill a session that we don't already have somebody. We'll start with our Facebook group. We'll go into the Graphy Facebook group. And so we'll be like, hey, who's in this city? And so that's, kind of the first place to go ahead and start getting sessions. And once you've, gone through the onboarding process, then you get and this is the other side, is you get a staff portal that you sign into, and any session that you've been assigned to has all of the information there. The client manager puts all the notes from the consultation. So, like, how many people, what ages, what are the kids' names, like, were there any special circumstances? Like, you're not walking in blind to a session. You have all of that information that you would have gotten if you were doing a consultation on your own. The location, if there's a permit that needed to be handled, we handle that, et cetera. And so that's all there. And then the button to upload your gallery, your log form, your mileage track, so that we can reimburse mileage. And then also like a behind the scenes upload, so you can get paid extra if you're taking behind the scenes stuff that we can use in our marketing. And all of your feedback is in there, and you can pre-see all of the guides that would be sent to you if there was an under 4-star rating. They're all available. There's videos of me shooting sessions. There's videos of me like doing headshots. I'm not gonna generally ask you to do headshots, but I filmed it, so it's in there. Might as well take it. So yeah, a lot of free education.
I love how much has gone into this. And I know it sounds almost, it almost sounds condescending. I really don't mean it to, but I'm just like, I feel like I'm relatively tied into the industry, and this just kind of came out of nowhere in my orbit. And I'm so thankful to Ashley that she introduced us, because this has just not only expanded my own thinking about what I can do, but it's given me ideas. Like, I'm absolutely going to sign up. And if there's stuff up here in Maine, awesome. If there's not, that's okay, because I'm still on the roster in case something happens. And
or if you're traveling, and if you're, somewhere else and we need somebody there, or
it's just such a low lift opportunity for people. And like I said in the little title thumbnail, it's like, no admin, just shoot. And that's kind of like the 4 magic words to any photographer. No admin. Are you kidding me? That's fantastic. So,
well, and I say, like, I don't politic publicly. Like, that's my hardcore, but this is how I try to make the impact on like, what's the world I want to see? I want to see people legitimately trying to uplift across the board. And, if at some point the magic vision of somebody coming along and sliding a very nice number across a shiny conference table, that's the manifested vision. But once that, I would like to go on to figure out how do we do more of the philanthropic entrepreneurship, and like how do we get more industries to think from that direction. And there are a lot of people out there doing it. It's just like that's kind of the bubble that I've decided is my playground as opposed to just an industry.
And I love again, I come back to the emotion that is tied behind the benefiting others, right? Doing for others. I have a friend that started a nonprofit last year to recycle wedding florals. Instead of just having one day at a wedding and just throwing them away, she started a nonprofit in Maine to recycle those, bring them to nursing homes and hospitals and, places that might need high-end flowers instead of them just going into a garbage dump somewhere. And it's not a new idea. It's done in other cities, and it's taken off like a hockey stick because people were like, I didn't know we could do stuff like this. And a lot of times it's just that education. Yeah. I didn't know this was available. I didn't know this was out there.
Right.
So hopefully, just through communication like this, getting it out as much as possible, that we can start to change some of these areas and give photographers a better lifestyle, give clients an easier way to get what they want done, give those matriarchs that want those family photos on the wall something easy to knock it out. Like, there's so much upside for everybody here. I'm really, really excited that you're building this. And I'm excited that you're the person at the head of it, because we need a couple of more Captain ADHDs up there and just seeing everything at once and seeing the chess pieces on the ceiling and, just putting it all in place. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Is there anything left here that I haven't covered that you want people to know? Because I just think there's so much here. We can go and digest it, but you always get something up your sleeve.
Oh, yeah. There's always 10 other projects that I, would love to do. My big focus right now is finding the right corporate partners to come in and really amplify, because from their standpoint and how I can make them more money, because that's always going to be the vision. A lot of them have, philanthropic budgets and whatnot for what they're doing out in the community, but we actually can give them, because we're putting out all of these campaigns that are being amplified by all the nonprofits. If a corporate partner comes in and says, like, we're going to match whatever is raised, now they're getting all thousands of impressions of impact marketing, of goodwill marketing, of like, we want to double the donation. And even the impressions that don't end in a donation, they're being seen out in the marketplace as a company who cares and is trying to do better. And so that was a lot of my focus at WPPI. I was also like looking into like, how can we make sure that the tools that I have spent 15 years curating in the industry, like how can I make sure that the photographers that are coming on board don't have to sift through all of the tools to find the right ones. Like, I've done all of that groundwork. Just use this one. It's and I can tell you why, and I can, all the reasons behind it. And so, any of those groups that want to, come in and be a part of it, there's absolutely a place for that.
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for your entire team. I know it's growing by leaps and bounds. I can't wait to see at next WPPI where you're at with all of this, because I know hopefully you'll have gotten that big acquisition check slid across the table. But in the meantime, I'm hoping that this really does grow in the 50 states.
Yeah.
And really starts to go from just local and regional to something much more nationwide, because the model is solid, and I'm just a big backer of what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you so much for spending all this time today. I really, really appreciate it. Stick around for just a minute or two while I close things up. But for everybody watching, please go to vacanva.com, get in touch with Ashley, get in touch with anybody on her team, ask them questions, give them, things that they haven't heard yet, which I doubt you'll be able to do, but try it anyway. And really think about doing something outside of your norm and doing things that can benefit the community around you as well. So Ashley, thanks again for showing up, and I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
No, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
You got it. Bye-bye.